Welcome to Audio Gyan with Kedar Nimkar, a podcast that documents insightful conversations with Indian designers, artists, musicians, writers, thinkers and creatives of all types. Catch us on iTunes or visit audiogyan.com for more Gyan sessions. Here's your host Kedar Nimkar.
Today I have Meeti Desai with us on Audio Gyan. Meeti is a founder and creative head at Meeti Design Lab. She is a designer, Indian classical dancer and educator. Meeti finds that the Indian classical dance has introduced her to traditional design, culture and aesthetics, which are the key players in her design practice. She studied applied arts in Mumbai, after which she went to US to study design. She is an executive trustee of Shakti Yogashrama Gurukulam near Lonavala, Mumbai. Her main body of work stems in these three areas and has been really nicely documented on her website meetidesignlab.com. I believe she is an ideal candidate for Audio Gyan as she technically touches all the three areas which Audio Gyan documents. So I am really honored and privileged to have you, Meeti, today. Thanks for giving us your time and welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Kedar. My pleasure.
Yeah. So we'll be discussing obviously all the three areas of your work, but it's more towards the intersection of design, art and philosophy in general. So I will start off with understanding your background and slightly knowing that where do you see design meeting dance or vice versa, and what's the philosophy behind it?
Design meeting dance, that is actually, to be very honest, a more particular proposition versus a universal one. And what I mean by that is that it just happened to be, as I went along in my journey, that design and dance happened and they kind of came together for me. So I don't know if there is something very universal in the sense that design and dance really meet. For me, they meet. For me, that is a very integral experience because my journey into dance actually started from design. There's a story behind it which I can share really briefly with you that I originally trained in applied art in design, undergraduate in Mumbai. And once I graduated, I, like everyone else, just took up a job in one of the finest design studios at that point. And it was just a matter of one day that I went into work, and my first job ever. And it just dawned on me that what I'm creating, they are paying me a salary for. So I'm getting money for it. What the company creates for the client is paying the company for it. So there is a financial transaction there. And then the client takes the creative work and goes out into the public sphere, the market, and they are promoting, projecting, selling their products.
Correct.
And they are earning money out of it. And it just occurred to me that, this is a completely all in all financial transaction. And I can't be doing this for the rest of my life. Of course, I'm saying it very easily right now, but it was very traumatizing at that point. And I just wept and came home and told my parents that I don't think I can do this for the rest of my life. And so my parents were quite clueless at that point, and they said, what, do you want to get into an NGO work or what do you want to do? I had no answers, and I just said, I just can't do it. And very soon, in about 2 weeks, I quit that job. And ever since, I've never really done a job anywhere.
Wow.
And but the search I had not found the answer. And as an escape, I just said, maybe I should just study further abroad. That was obviously the next obvious thing. And I looked up in university and I found a very lovely small design school called Portfolio Center. And I got an admission and I went there to study. And a week into that course, I realized that everything that I'm creating here is all outside me. I'll end up designing a book, a brochure, an installation. It's all outside. I just had a strong feeling that I want to experience design in my body. I want to design with my body. I want to engage with holistic design. And that was a term that I'm still trying to deconstruct. That's a term. What is holistic design? But it just came to me that, how do I really internalize design and design with my body, and I went to my dean telling him that I'm quitting this course, I'm going back to India a week down in the USA, saying that I need to engage with design more physically, I want to design with my body. And while I was talking to him, it just came out that I think I just need to dance, because that is designing with your body and exploring with your body and, creating movement with the body. And so actually dance happened to me much later, and dance came through me through an experience of wanting to go deeper into design of my body. I came into dance. So my experience of design and dance is actually, they are like two sides of a coin, and they are like two different dimensions through which I express and engage and explore creativity. Yeah.
That's brilliant. I was not aware of it. I mean, I read through the few of your articles where I knew that you went to US, and that was the turning point. And then dance happened was something new to me as well.
Yes. Yeah. I came into dance through design. Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll be like, the next few questions are mainly to understand a few things which are more at an abstract level. So like, this is one of my observations, because I also slightly come from a classical school of thought.
Okay.
So why is classical, anything for that matter, like song, music, dance for that matter, has to be so much disciplined?
Well, that's a very potent question. So first, what do we really mean by the term discipline? That's something that really needs to be explored, because discipline is looked on as very often as something that is authoritative, yeah, or very dogmatic, or very restricting. I can use the word discipline, but to me discipline is that which requires awareness, that which requires integration, that which requires focus, and that which requires an inward eye into what you do. And whenever you have these, then there will be a certain grip, or there'll be a certain slowing down, which is actually discipline. And all the classical forms are about that. That it is a value. Like classical is more like a value which is about going deep. It is about finding a core or finding a center. And something like that cannot be achieved by just without awareness. So for me, discipline is awareness. And yeah, so definitely why do the forms have discipline? Because all the forms are somewhere guiding you or taking you towards a point of awareness, a point of integration. And any kind of form of integration, assimilation cannot happen without focus. And to me, that is discipline. So yeah, I'm sorry, I don't know if I've answered your question directly.
Yeah, I mean, what you're saying connects at a much more philosophical or a abstract level. But for a layman, if you have to slightly make them understand that whenever you go to a classical school of thought, kind of a Guru Shishya style, then disciplined is more towards just completely surrendering to the Guru, and then following or like just copying what the Guru has told you, and then having a discipline in your routine, which is at a very trivial level, but still there are certain things which have to be followed to achieve this kind of abstraction, right?
Yes. So, there is a very... discipline is a certain kind of rigor is there, and it's not about also blindly following what your Guru says. You are basically dedicating yourself to the art, and the arts demand that energy, that focus from you. And in order to give the art that energy and focus starting from your day-to-day life, from the point you wake up to you sleep, to what you eat, to how you engage, there has to be a certain rhythm that you have to set. Otherwise, you cannot engage with these arts, because they require that much focus, they require that much concentration, they require that much time, because time is very stretched in the classical expanse, because time frames are not about 1 month, 2 month workshops, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. The time frames are 7 year chunks, so one stage of training in 7 years, the other stage in another 7 and 7 and 7. It's a lifetime journey. And so the arts are designed to me they are a fantastic design that the culture has created, where it is multi-layered and multi-dimensional, that at once there is it gives you day-to-day discipline, it gives you philosophy, it gives you a vision through which you can engage in life, it gives you a way in which you can express your creative self, and it gives you fulfillment. So there are multiple aspects to it, and the forms are such that in order to master what the form is visualized as, you require expanse of time, and it also require intensity and focus and awareness. And in order to get that, you need to have a basic rhythm in your life. I cannot be waking up at one point one day and another point another day. Then you can't practice these arts. Like these arts are designed in a certain way that require a certain kind of mindset and framework to be able to explore and work through them. So there is a discipline in lifestyle, there is a discipline in the form, there is a discipline somewhere in your own inner self also that comes over time. And then it is up to the individual how deep one goes into it and where you stop. And actually if one wants that, it can go deeper and deeper and deeper, and the journey continues.
Sorry, but like to be more curious at this point, that even martial arts has discipline, or military has discipline. So these other domains also have discipline ingrained in their lifestyle. So what could be the reason that even performing arts also has... what is the difference between like a person having discipline in performing arts as opposed to any other discipline?
Well, performing arts, along with discipline, it lends itself to creative expression. It lends itself to rasa, which normally, I don't know with a military regime if there is rasa, or if there is, this burst of the inner creative. Like, it gives me an outlet to express. It gives me it actually gives me an ocean to express. It has that potential. So you practice the discipline in so much rigor, and when you have mastered the form, which is not, I don't even know if it is achievable at a certain means. I don't even know what that means, to be very honest. It's just a verbal construct. But the rigor and the discipline, finally it's like a burst, that rains, it showers, because you are able to express yourself. And to me, just at a very human level, everyone feels the need to express, whether it is even a businessman or a CA or an artist or a vegetable vendor on the road. The moment you give them a way in which they can share or open their hearts out, there is a twinkle in people's eyes. And that is a human instinct. And the arts actually just go stretch that like a rubber band and give you so much potential. So it is actually very fulfilling. So that's the difference, that there is a whole dimension, that this whole discipline, so that you can express yourself in the end. And that is an experience
on its own. So in one of your YouTube videos, you mentioned philosophy is ingrained in the Indian culture, to which I personally agree. But again, not to be a critique or just to rant, but it's seen slightly less in the current time, right? So what could be the reasons, or what could be the possible reasons to see that philosophy? Because I'll tell you, recently I had a audio GAN with Vikram Galot, who's a teacher in Delhi, and he said humanities as a subject is missing, history as a subject is missing in the industrial context. So maybe that could be one of the reasons. But like, from your perspective, what could be the reason why philosophy is not perceived as it's supposed to be in the current time, as per my take?
So why is it not living and so alive in our society today, is what you're asking me, right?
Yes.
Well, sociological changes, society is leaning more towards an outward life, towards a more consumeristic society. We are obviously society is moving along there, and also entertainment. This whole overload of entertainment forms is actually taking away from the quiet or the stillness within the arts, and that's where the philosophy has to go. It means it melts. It kind of ceases to be in the surface level. It is always there in the arts. Whether one engages with that aspect or not is a question for the artist. But the entertainment forms now, the popular art culture is so accessible and so out there. And actually the arts are not at all about entertainment. As my master and guide Mandakini Trivedi, who actually has really given me this vision of the art, of philosophy being the root and base of the art through which it all manifests. So philosophy is actually there at every level. So she always says that, these art forms are not entertainment forms. They are not meant to entertain. They are meant to elevate. They are meant to engage. They are meant to lend itself to introspection, to stillness, to silence. And all this is possible only if you engage with the philosophy in the form. The moment you don't engage with the philosophy, then they become entertainment, outward, glamorous, flamboyant, and society is moving that side. So that's why, and philosophy requires, because philosophy is not a word, and philosophy is not text, and philosophy is not saying that this is the philosophy. I can't put it on the shelf and say that is the philosophy. Philosophy is that which you live. And philosophy is that which you be, and philosophy is that which becomes life. So then obviously that is difficult, because if every individual practices the art that way, then their lives will be different, and thus then society will be different. And that's not where society is going. So these forms are deep rooted in philosophy, and for me, if one tries to, there is always an effort to try to live that philosophy. There is no claim that, I am living the philosophy and XYZ is not living the philosophy. No, there is no judgment or even claim on one's own lifestyle. But definitely there is a intention to try and live this philosophy if one is practicing this art on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. It's beautiful. I mean, it's just like I'm just happy of the fact that this is getting documented with your really good articulation of overall things. So yeah, cool. And then why is classical dance activity also? Actually, this question is slightly different, but I've seen in few of the places also, and personally, it cannot be generalized, but still, a dance form sometimes, or most of the times, is a solo activity, right? So can you tell us why classical dance form is a solo kind of a thing?
Well, it all roots out from the same philosophy that we spoke about. So as my master Mandakini Trivedi, she always has, really focused on this point that these forms have actually come from a worldview. A worldview that the culture had of the way they saw life. So in the traditional Indian texts, there is a very beautiful verse which says, "From the formless comes the form, and the form takes you back to the formless."
Wow.
Now, to me, as I practice the art and as I understand as a student of this subject and this philosophy, this reveals the whole vision of the culture, that there is a formless element, and the formless goal or the energy is all about, the culture always felt that the purpose of life is to grow, the purpose of life is moksha or liberation or transcending consciousness or finding the absolute or God or however you want to label it. Now, so the culture very deeply felt, and that's why you see it at the grassroots level also. Philosophy in India even you see it in the
Yeah,
grassroots
yeah,
level. Even the
taxi wala has,
taxi wala will give you some philosophy as they go along, right?
Yeah.
So because it is in the grassroots level, and that is where the culture felt that the purpose of life is to raise the level of consciousness. Now you give it the name of God, religion, forms. That's a separate thing. But but to raise the level of consciousness is not a very linear process. I'm sure we all know that it is not so easy saying that, okay, and this is the purpose of life, and so the culture very compassionately and very intelligently first revealed that this is the purpose of life. Then they realize that this is not so linear and easy. So then they created many ladders, that when you climb on these ladders, it will lend itself to transcendence. The classical Indian arts are these ladders. So classical dance, the way it is designed, the way it is formalized, lends itself to transcendence. And that's why, as my teacher calls these, like this is something that this has been her life's work, that she has called these the transcendental arts. The transcendental arts are arts which the practice of this lends itself and facilitates transcendence. And in the Shastras, there is a verse, one of the verses says that these arts are Brahmananda Sahodara. Brahmananda Sahodara is the twin brother of Brahmananda. So the experience that these forms can lend itself to is the twin of the experience of the Brahmananda. So this is there in the culture, and this is there in the philosophy, and this is there in the text, and this is there in the form. But how you practice that form is the game changer. Do you first of all understand it intellectually? Secondly, do you have faith and see that in reality as an experience? And that is also not enough. Then do you
experience it?
Do you work and do you engage with the form with that? So I personally feel that there are three aspects, that there is always, first of all, what is the intention?
Okay.
What is my intention with the form? Like, is my intention it being an entertainment form? What is my intention as I engage with this form? And so once a clarity on intention, but then there is also the intensity through which you engage with it, and also so there is the intention, and then the intensity through which you see how you engage with the form. So the form has it, whether the practitioner has that integrity also. So these are the three things. There is an intention with what you engage with the form, then the integrity through which you practice it, and finally the intensity. How intense and how deep, and it's a journey. So one is traveling, one falls, but somewhere if one picks up the threads and finds that the form has it. So when you say that, why is it a solo form? So I come back to the question that because it came from a worldview which is about raising the level of consciousness, the form was created in a certain way, and when it all boils down to an individual journey, because raising of consciousness or working on your inner self is not a group activity. So you have to walk alone on this path. Right. So in our tradition, you always say the inner journey, you are all alone there.
Correct.
It's not set in a group, hey, let's hang out, let's raise level of consciousnesses. It doesn't work like that, right? The moment I become focused on something inside, I become quiet. And that is why the dance was originally visualized as a solo form, because this is a journey on which you walk alone. So as a artist and as a practitioner of the form, when you're engaging with this form which lends itself to transcendence, you engage and flow through it all alone. And that is why they were visualized as solo forms more often. Of course, because of a lot of sociological changes and changes in trends, the classical dance forms also have moved from solo to group to all kinds. But that is a sociological issue and a different discussion in itself. Yeah, but they are solo forms because it's all about the individual journey. You walk alone. When you walk inward, you can have satsang. You can have
Like-minded
people. But finally, each one's journey is theirs. Even the guru's journey is the gurus and the shishyas is the shishyas. The guru and shishya's journey is also that way, not together.
Correct. Yeah.
That, Kabir, in fact, just yesterday I was listening to a Kabir song which says that the guru ki karni guru bhare or shishya ki or chele ki chela. So it is like that. It is the individual journey. Yeah.
Hansa Akela, I think.
Yeah. One of those. I was just listening to one of those yesterday and I said, yeah.
In fact, a lot of things which you mentioned just now, I'm able to connect the dots where even Kishori Amonkar also, I think, looks at music to be like divine and transcendental art. Even Zakir Hussain, a lot of interviews, he has mentioned very briefly about these things. So, it's very... the next one is... so, I'm trying to... this is the designer side of my question. I'm trying to find out... then you also have been practicing design.
Yeah.
So, similarly, like dance, is there a possibility of finding classical design?
That's what is classical design? See, first of all, what is the word classical, right? So there are, if you look at the dictionary, classical will tell you that which is Greek, that which is Roman, that is, but the way I have understood it through my training in dance and the tradition, that classical is actually a value. A value, as I said earlier also, that lends itself to awareness, lends itself to stillness, lends itself to slowing down, lends itself to that which is aware of environment, aware of aesthetics, aware of... It's an inclusive quietening that is classical. And it's subtle and it's a value. So does design have classicism? It depends what design. So normally when you use the word design, it lends itself to a more commercial engagement of communication design, graphic design, fashion design, etc. Now within that also it's tough because those are more pragmatic. The end result is more pragmatic. So when the end result, because it comes, so what is the starting point and what is the end point in every exploration? So if the starting point is an intention to create an aesthetic and to communicate, but now how much can one really get into philosophy over there? But as a practitioner as a designer, I might have a life philosophy. And if I have a philosophy that I live, then everything that I do, the philosophy will pierce into that.
Correct.
So then if I have a philosophy that I feel that I try to walk and live, then even when I do design, that philosophy comes in. But now from project to project, it will vary because will the subject lend itself to that?
Correct.
But classical design in the contemporary sense, like when you talk about the Western, first of all, it's very interesting that design as a word does not have a literal Indian translation. There is Kala, there is Rekha, there is Chitra, but that all is not design. So design is not the word and the term design. Like this actually has been one of my real journeys, because when many years ago, I would feel that, design also has that philosophy, because I am engaging with two kind of idioms, right?
Yeah.
This comes from a life philosophy dance comes from a life philosophy translated into a form which lends itself to a whole body engagement and a possibility of raising the level of consciousness. Now, design didn't start only there. It started with consumerism. It started with the Industrial Revolution, that level of design. But design there are two aspects to design. It's a verb and it's a noun. So as a verb, it's a more pragmatic exploration.
Correct.
Where I don't know. Philosophy is the practitioner's philosophy. That I, as a designer, feel this is my philosophy and I'll have a philosophy. But as a noun, if you look at the term as a noun, I feel design is all pervasive. I feel design is there everywhere.
Correct.
I feel everyone is a designer. A businessman is a designer. A poet is a designer. A dancer is a designer. A person who cooks food, a chef is a designer. So it's how you look at it. I look at design very holistically. And my journey began when I said I want to engage with holistic design. And I still, at this point when I sit here, if someone tells me define holistic design, I'm still finding, and I don't know if there is one final answer for design, what is holistic design. But yeah, so what is classical design? I feel classical design is the classical arts are classical designs. When I look at design, the contemporary design explorations, yes, there can be classicism within a particular design that I see, but it's not a universal construct. And I don't know if I'm also being able to answer this clearly.
Yeah. In fact, you have opened a lot more questions, but I think I'll park that right now because it's something to first digest this part of it at least.
Yeah.
Cool. So Meeti, I would like to conclude with one last question is you have also been working in the education space. So where does education sit in the overall scheme of things of your practice?
Well, my engagement with education really began at Shakti Yoga Ashrama Gurukulam, which is a space which is dedicated to the study of classical Indian arts and sciences with environment, ecology and lifestyle and spirituality at the base of it. I came to this space when I came to dance because my master and guide Srimati Mandakini Trivedi, she runs this space and it was founded by her spiritual mentor Swami Shri Harish Madhukar 19 years ago, where he felt a lacuna in the education system. He felt that what these kids are being educated is not really education. The vision is that only that which liberates is knowledge. And how can we impart that knowledge? And that's how this space came into being, Shakti Yoga Ashrama. When I came to train in dance, that's where I met my teacher. And that's where I started. I trained there in dance, but I also started working and assisting and volunteering within that space. And the living and the lifestyle and the vision of that space has revealed a holistic view of education to me. So my journey with education actually began at Shakti Yoga Ashram with my journey in dance. But innately, I am very drawn to this whole thought of how can one train a mind or groom an individual to be full in the sense
contented.
Yeah, because it's not only about academic engagement and finding the right job. We all know, because everyone in their journeys comes to that point that it's not only about that. So can you groom or can you impart knowledge in a way which is full, where there is consciousness of environment, ecology, there is an understanding of arts, aesthetics, beauty, there is a space where you understand and respect discipline, where you take something that you feel your life goal is and go deep into it. And also in the base of all this, spirituality. And I really do feel that, without an inner journey, somewhere a certain incompleteness is there. So a beginning of the journey. Then as you travel through it, so spirituality as a part of training children, I feel is very important. So at Shakti Yoga Ashram, as I worked and volunteered and grew, I actually have been groomed in that space. So my larger framework and understanding of arts, of education, of even design, and actually to be honestly saying life comes from that grooming and that training. That gives me that facility to engage with design in a certain way, gives me the facility to engage, talk about culture in a certain way, or bring that in my personal practice or in my educational practice. So Shakti Yoga Ashram is this space which has given me that, and that's where my journey into education really began. And I have been working in that space. I am the executive trustee now under the mentorship of my guide Mandakini Trivedi, and we work towards doing programs. We do residential retreats over there for college students, for teachers, for individuals. We also work at the rural level of working with the village community and the children over there to give them these larger values. So it's an educational, cultural center which is looking at alternative ways of learning which actually are the core ways of learning. With these two terms of mainstream and alternate have just emerged because of the sociological structures, but that is actually the real learning. So we work towards in that space, and there is a lot of development that we hope to see in the next few years at Shakti Yoga Ashrama. And
in fact, recently, as in for past few years, me and my friend have been talking about Swami Vivekananda to a certain extent, and when you go through the complete works of his and just scan, even if like bits and pieces, you will understand these are the actual spiritual values which have to be taught in school rather than Pythagoras theorem. I don't know, maybe Pythagoras is required, but still there is a lot more to be shared with the younger generation to inculcate certain I don't know,
just life skills, and now it's become in the alternative education space, this has become a big important word. What are life skills? But more than also life skills, but also just the importance of having an inner life, importance of engaging with nature,
or just be aware,
and also beauty. Sometimes beauty is negated. There are no aesthetics. I go into educational spaces and they look like I don't know what,
Matchbox,
and when there is no beauty in the environment, how can there be beauty in the hearts, and how will there be beauty in relationships or beauty in society? So there are many aspects into something that kind of builds an educational experience, so experiential education, So I'm very deeply interested in that, and even within my design exploration, I've started an initiative called Education Design, in which we work with schools and NGOs and educational spaces to enhance educational experiences, whether it is through redesigning spaces, whether it is through designing toolkits, whether it is doing teachers training, using design thinking as a tool. So in many ways, I kind of engage. And it's something that has just emerged very organically recently, and now I feel probably that is the larger journey that I am going to embark, to kind of bring all this together within education finally. And
I would totally recommend listening to another podcast. I mean, this looks like a self plug in the same show.
Okay.
But there's a audiogan by Vikram Galot. He talks about education in general, and it's really radical thinking and overall what needs to happen in the education space. So it was a great conversation with him as well. So
I'd love to. I'll definitely listen, hear it. Yes.
Cool. All right. I think these were the few questions, and obviously there's a lot more to talk about, and there's a lot many things to be discussed overall. So maybe we can have another audiogan just on spirituality, maybe. All right. So if people have to generally follow your work or look into what you're doing, and overall, you mentioned there are some 3 websites. If you can.
So I'm not really active on social media, just to say that. But I do have websites. So my design website is meetidesignlab.com. I do have a dance website, which is meetidance.com. And most importantly, the Shakti Yoga Ashrama website, which is not my website, which is the website of the space, which is the work that I deeply believe in, and I feel that needs to really spread. The website is www.shaktiyogashramah.com. And we do programs through the year. We have festivals, and we'd be very happy to host groups. So do have a look at the Shakti Yoga Ashrama website, and you can reach out at any point. Very accessible. There are emails and contact numbers there on all the websites. And just one thing that I think I would like to say as we conclude, that somewhere when one talks about larger goals which are not mundane, or a larger than life philosophy, whether it is through design or whether it's through dance or through education, it is the intention is not to be wiser than thou. The intention is not to claim a certain kind of achievement at all. It is just that it happens to be a journey that I am on, and I'm just a mere traveler, and there are falls and dips all the time, and one tries to just grip and work towards it. So the visions are there, the philosophy is there from the culture, and it is just a gift of
spotting it.
That it's there all around, and I have been very blessed and fortunate to have had the opportunity to be associated with it. But I am still really trying to follow it and go deep into it, and I'm just a mere traveler. So I would just like to say that. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, that's it. That's it from today's Gyan session. Thank you. Thank you once again, Meeti, for giving us your time.
Thank you so much, Kedar. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
And that's it from today's Gyan session. Catch us on iTunes, Saavn, Stitcher, or any podcasting app you use. Do rate us on iTunes and follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Stay tuned for more Gyan on audiogyan.com. Till then, bye.